You know it's going to be a good video when I start laughing. I'm Jennifer Beamer from Expertly Dyed Art by Science. Let me say it again. Expertly Dyed Art by Science. Alright, now, Niddy Noddy. More than likely you just found out that this thing actually exists. Why the heck is it called Niddy Noddy? I have no idea. Maybe it will be a research topic at some point. I don't know. My husband, he laughs so many times when I tell him the names of some of the equipment that I use. And when he was writing the title for this video, he wrote Nitty Noddy, like knit and like K-N-I-T and not like K-N-O-T, because it seems to make sense. But it's not spelled that way, and I don't know why it's called that. So maybe I will find out and let you guys know. Anyway, so you probably found out what this thing is, and you looked at it, and it's very, very confusing, right? So this is mine. Okay, ta-da! And what's nice about this one is I can actually lay this one flat. A lot of the really nice Niddy Noddies will be glued. So this is how mine is. It's from top to bottom like this. And how you use it. So one of the arms at the top needs to be rotated perpendicular to the one on the bottom. So I don't know if you can see this when I turn it, right? This one is straight on. This one is turned sideways. I think it is a little bit better here. Okay, so this is a Niddy Noddy. And this is how you get yarn off of your bobbin, like here, right? Because you don't go to the yarn store, like if you have a really nice yarn store where you live, you don't find yarn like this, right? They take it off, and it usually looks like this. This is the skein of yarn that I already pulled off with my new Niddy Noddy, because this one I bought to match my Kromsky wheel. So if you can see, same color and everything, right? Even the chair that I'm sitting on, it's the same color. So the one that I had before, hubby, Brandon, he built me one out of PVC pipe. It didn't look very pretty, but it did match my babe wheel, which is made primarily out of PVC pipe. And I was really used to using that. And of course, this is new, so I'm getting used to using this one. So I have to wind things on a little bit differently than I used to. This one is the largest one. One loop around will be 72 inches. And you'll get a skein of yarn that looks like this. Okay. Now, if you do not have a Niddy Noddy, I will just say first that you can use a chair. Ah, there we go. Okay. And what you would do is you would just take your yarn off your wheel, and then you would just wrap it around something rigid like a chair, for example. And this is what I did when I first started spinning with a drop spindle. I would wrap this around one of our kitchen chairs that was 32 inches around. And what you do is you measure how big around the devices that you're using, the object. And so for that case, it was 32 inches. Then I multiplied it by the number of wraps. So if I made 20 wraps, I would do 32 inches times, what did I say, 20? 20 wraps. And then I would divide by 36 and know how many yards that I had. But this is a lot easier. If you have one of these, it's a great little tool. However, what I used to do is I would just hold the start of the yarn here with my thumb, and then I would start wrapping. However, I found that because this one's so much bigger than my other one, it was kind of awkward. So what I'm going to do is just do a really simple tie. Like I just tied it, right? You can undo it pretty easily. It doesn't have to be fancy. And then I will hold this, and I will loop it over one of the ends. Then I will go down, up, down, up. So essentially, I have wrapped the yarn all the way around once. Okay, we'll do it again. Here, over the top, under the bottom, over to the other side at the top, and behind in the back. All the way back up to where we started. Okay? So I'll do it again a little faster. There we go. Now, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because rarely am I ever actually perfect. I try. Something that I like to do, and you don't have to do it like this is just what I like to do. I like to keep my bobbin on my wheel so that I can just pull the yarn off as I go. Like this. Most of the time, actually, it comes down to me being lazy and or impatient. A lot of times I just want to get the yarn off the wheel so that I can set the twist, wash it, let it dry, and a lot of times get it packaged for sale. I did a lot of custom spinning back when I was still living in the United States, and I would be spinning maybe a 4-ounce braid for a customer every week at least. So between running a business, working full-time, teaching martial arts, and being a wife and a bunny mommy, all these things, I had a lot of stuff on my plate. So it was kind of a necessity to just be able to do this right from the wheel. So that's what I'm doing, and hopefully I'll be able to do this fast enough so that I can do this whole thing in a video. Remember before when I said I was going to ply this yarn together from this bobbin with the yarn that I spun on the other bobbin? Well, this is the yarn from the bigger bobbin, and I made exactly 100 wraps, so I was quite impressed how nicely it turned out. So that comes down to 200 yards. So my first one was 200 yards, and this was spun as a 3-ply fingering weight yarn, and I'm assuming it was probably about 2.5 ounces or so. And oh gosh, okay. Every once in a while, the problem with doing this on the wheel like this, every once in a while the yarn will get stuck on the hook, but that's okay. As long as you catch it, it won't damage anything. When you're putting your yarn on the Niddy Noddy, you want to have a pretty consistent tension. I'm not pulling tight, I'm just pulling it enough so that it stays taut, because you don't want it to relax at this stage, especially if you're knitting or spinning a single that you want to keep as a single. Basically, a single is an unplied yarn. You spin it one direction and that's it. You take it off the wheel. So it's crucial in that situation to actually maintain tension as you're pulling it off of the bobbin. Another thing I will note, I have released the bobbin and the whirl from the drive band here. So this is just sitting loose. There are some wheel attachments. I think both my Babe wheel and this Kromsky wheel, you can get an attachment called a skein winder, and basically you use your wheel to, like, you treadle, and what it does is it pushes the skein winder around in a circle, kind of like what I'm doing with my arm here, how it's winding this onto the Niddy Noddy. And it basically just means you don't have to do what I'm doing by hand. You just use your feet to pedal the wheel, and the skein winder fills up your yarn just like this, and it's super easy. However, I feel like that's an unnecessary attachment unless you are the sort who is a production spinner. I kind of do these as I have time. I don't often have time, but maybe I do now that we're living in Korea. I'll have a little bit more time to do this. But something else that you can do is you can skein a yarn with the skein winder as you were actually spinning a new yarn. I don't know if all wheels can do that or all attachments can do that, but that's something that I've just heard randomly on the internet from who knows where, right? It's the internet. You can probably find it in a million places, and I'll never figure out exactly where it was that I originally read that. So, anyway, I don't mind doing it by hand because it doesn't really take that long. And once you get the hang of it, maybe five minutes to pull this off, and you're good to go. So I am pretty much done now. So if you can see here on the bobbin, I usually need about a yard or two of yarn to really get the hang of both spinning it the first time and then plying it if I do that. So this yarn isn't actually very good. Like you can see right here, that's just terrible. That's terrible. So I'm actually just going to cut the yarn right about here. And what I like to do to keep the ends from unraveling is I'll just tie this in a little knot. This is my own obsessive behavior because I'm sure that this won't unravel. But to make sure, I always like, ta-da, I dropped the scissors. So I just worry for probably no reason. So I always just put a knot, a simple overhand knot in there. You don't have to do that, I just do. And then we will untie the part where we had at the beginning, and I'm just going to tie this in a knot. So a square knot is right over left, then left over right, and it makes a pretty nice tight knot. Then with this yarn, this is now what I would call waste yarn. I'm just going to cut it off the wheel here. So I'm going to use this to make what's called figure-8 ties. And that's just a really fancy word. I'm going to make 4 of them. No, I'm going to make 3. I don't have enough. They're not long enough, so I'm just going to divide it into thirds. Thirds-ish. We're not doing any exact science stuff here. And I'm sure all this fumbling around really shows that I'm not being very scientific about this. Anyway, so I'll cut these. And you don't have to use the yarn that you've been spinning. Sometimes I luck out and the yarn that I made from start to finish is exactly what I want it to be, or if I'm trying to maximize yardage, I'll actually keep that little bit of yarn that isn't very good because it will be part of the cast on. So as I got talking, I completely just went into autopilot. So I'll show you what I did for that down here. So you have your yarn on here. If you take this off, you're going to have a giant mess, right? You need some way to keep these wraps in order. So I will make a figure-8 with this yarn that I cut off on this side. So basically what I do is I kind of roughly divide this into thirds, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, just that's about enough, that's about enough, okay? And then you want to go over, under, over, under. So the tie is over the middle but under the ends. Then I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to go whoop, over the top, behind the back of the middle one, and over the top of this way. So if you can see, it bundles each of these sections. And then I do the same square knot here, left over right, right over left, or whatever it was I actually did. And then when I tie this, I make sure that I tie it such that it's a little bit loose, but it's not so loose that the yarn will easily get tangled. Normally I like to do 4 wraps, 4 of these figure-8 wraps, but like I said, I only had enough for 3, so I'm only going to do 3, and that's okay. Usually for a 2-yard skein, I like to do about 4 wraps, or about 4 ties. A yard or yard and a half, it's really easy to do 2 or 3. The more you do, really, the better it stays together, especially if you're going to spin first, then dye, instead of dyeing first and then spinning, which is what I did here. So I figure 8 tie this, okay, and then we're done, right? So, I'm moving so fast, the cameraman is having a hard time staying up with me. So, if you look at the ends here, this one has like this neat little thing here on the end, and this side doesn't, it's just plain. So what you would do is you would just, because it's curved, you can just slip this off the end, and of course it's can't do in the air like that. So you just pull it off the end, like so, and then you have your skein of yarn. Ta-da! And it's actually pretty well balanced if you look at it. The way you can tell is if you look at the end, if the yarn is doing this, it may mean that you've over twisted it a little bit. I told you before I spun this with a really high twist and I was going to ply it with a really high twist, so I'm thinking that most of the twist has been accounted for while I was spinning it, so I don't really have to worry so much about it being over twisted or under twisted. So, and then this one is actually a finished yarn, and I will explain what a finished yarn is in another video, but here are my two skeins, and I spun them pretty evenly so they mostly match. This one looks a little fuller than this one, and that's because of the process of setting the twist for this one. That's why it looks so much fatter, I guess. Anyway, so now you know what a Niddy Noddy is. You've gotten your laughs out. Maybe your husband has laughed at you too, or maybe your boyfriend. And hopefully in this video you've been able to see he keeps moving the camera. Hopefully in this video you've been able to see how to actually use this thing, and if you don't have one, you can still get your yarn off of your wheel or off of a spindle by wrapping it around something rigid like a kitchen chair. Okay? Anyway, so if you like this video and you want to see more from me, please subscribe, like this video. There's a little button down there. Click it so you like it, or not. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions. Please let me know. I check all my messages of Facebook and Twitter, which I will also link below, that I get around to posting things there pretty regularly. And I also have a blog, so if you want to know more about what I do, where I'm coming from, for any kinds of updates, there's an RSS feed, so if you want, you can have it available whenever I post a new one, so you don't have to keep checking, because we all know life is too full to keep checking the internet for random things, right? We'd rather be doing other things than being on the internet, right? Anyway, thanks. Have a good day.